Your journey has been an interesting one up to here. You've questioned so much more than those around you. You've even questioned yourself as to how you could have grown into these thoughts. Am I crazy? When did I begin to think differently? Why do people in general appear so limited in their thought process? Rest assured, you are not alone. The world is slowly waking up to what you already know inside, yet can't quite verbalize. Welcome to the Spiritual Dope Podcast, the show that answers the questions you never even knew to ask, but needed the answers to. Questions about you, this world, the people in it. Most importantly, how do I proceed now moving forward? We don't claim to have all the answers, but we sure do love living in the question. Time for another hit of Spiritual Dope with your host, Brandon Henley. Let's get right into today's episode.
Hey there, Spiritual Dope. I'm on here today with Kiersten Parsons Hatchcock, author of Little Voices, How Kids in Spirit Helped a Reluctant Medium Escape and Heal from Abuse, is an award-winning self-taught carpenter, furniture designer, and founder of Mod Mom Furniture, a kids furniture company featured on ABC Shark Tank. She's also a TEDx speaker and intuitive medium who works for the National Institute for Law and Justice, helping detectives and families uncover truth in missing persons and homicide cases. In her previous work life, Kiersten was a staff writer for Northern Arizona University and TV marketing executive for A&E TV network and the History Channel. I hear scurrying next to my door, like somebody's going to come in. An Ohio native, she now resides in Phoenix, Arizona with her husband, Scott, daughters, Natalie, Grace, and pup, Scout.
Yes.
Kiersten, how are you? It's been a minute. I think we've been on the schedule for a while now. So glad that you're on today.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
And we talked a little bit about, how we connected, right? And we just talked about Katie Beecher, who was on the podcast before, was in your book, and she said, "Hey, you should, check out Spiritual Dope, see what's going on."
She's fantastic.
And somehow I made it past your bullshit filter, and here I am, and here we are. So
yeah, that's hard to do.
Given the circumstances, that's right. Well, so, look, I like to start these off with the whole idea of, and you're obviously open to this, is that you and I were conduits for like universal energy, right? And also the whole idea that you and I are going to have a conversation with each other, and we'll think we're understanding what we're saying to each other, and that'll be pretty cool. But like somebody else is going to be listening in that has like a totally different take on what we're saying and a totally different understanding. And there's a message coming through you today to that person. What's that message?
It's a big message, actually. As you read in the book, it's a big message. So the message the reason I wanted to write the book, let me just start there, is because I really wanted to help skeptics and also other domestic violence survivors like myself kind of learn to maybe open themselves a little bit to intuition. And I know I'm speaking, to the choir here with you, but my journey it's been strange. It's a stranger than fiction memoir, that's for sure. I grew up in Ohio, very grounded. I built a furniture company. I went on Shark Tank. I did all the stuff that you normally would do, with business and career and family. But then when I was 36, I sort of got hit over the head with intuition in the form of mediumship. And it changed my life in very big ways. And it also helped save my life, which is why I wrote the book.
And thank you, right? I think that, not only just opening yourself up to intuition, because I think intuition, we all I would say I understand intuition. It's just kind of like, oh, I've got a gut feeling, right?
Yeah.
When you're saying intuition, you're talking to spirits, right? I mean, that's you specifically and the mediumship. And I just want to make sure that, hey, cool. If it's working, awesome. Like, use it. Don't ignore it, right? Like, you're hearing something in your mind that's like, hey, don't go down that alley. And you're like, who are you? And it's like, some other attachments to it. And there's some pieces in the book too I'd love for us to cover, like that led you to go ahead and follow that intuition and kind of where it led you. But like, you hear voices and you listen to them and you talk with them.
Yes.
And I think that you'd mentioned, you're like, am I schizophrenic in the book? And you're like, I'm not schizophrenic, right?
Yeah, so I went down every single road, that you can go down from the psychological standpoint. But yeah.
Right. Well, because, as far as we know, as far as you know, like that's not right. Right. We're
Right.
not supposed, there's like, I didn't get a
No.
manual that said, in fourth grade, be ready for this.
Yes, or at 36, be ready for this. Yeah, no,
Right.
I'm from Ohio. Came from a very grounded family. My parents were teachers. I was not even really brought up in an environment where we talked about, trusting gut feelings or anything like that,
Right.
to be honest with you.
Right.
So when I do speak about intuition, it absolutely includes mediumship and hearing things and seeing things. But at the same time, I know there's also that internal voice, that internal compass
Sure.
that I had to really figure out how to listen to.
Right.
And thank God I eventually did.
Yeah, well, and I think in both these scenarios, right, Kiersten, this is for the audience too, that when you tune into intuition or some of these voices, you're connected to source, right? There's different channels for it all. And if it starts coming through, like, I don't know, don't ignore it, right? Pay attention to it. If you feel, I think, inclined like you did to go seek out help, just to make sure that, hey, double checking.
Yes,
right.
Just double checking.
Double checking, making sure we're all cool. We all agree that I'm not crazy. Okay, we're all in agreement. Let's keep moving forward. So, let's dive into it, right? Like, so I'm going to tell the audience too. Like when I got Kiersten's book, I thought, I'm jumping into mediumship. I didn't really read the subtitle too well, and just kind of jumping right into it. And again, based off of having a conversation with Katie, right? Like hers and I had that conversation with mediumship. And the beginning of your book starts off like that, right? Which is great. It was, and so I read, somebody else read that it's a page, like a binge reader. It really was. Like, I think I almost ripped through like the first 100 pages really quick. So fun and great read. Just so you know. But let's talk about it, right? So, okay, you're kind of hanging out, you're building furniture, you've got like, your 2.5 children, a husband, and everything's all working out, and you're building furniture, right? When do you start like hearing these voices? What's happening? Like, what's the scene?
So it actually started in the garage. So I had already been building furniture in our garage in Burbank, California for about 3 years, I think at that point, almost 4 years. And so my normal routine is take the kids to school, come back, basically belly up to the wood bench and start working. So I think what happened is that I think they're a combination of two things. I learned the healing modality of Reiki, and I did that in order to help our oldest child with anxiety. And I was a skeptic, even, going into that and even practicing that, I was very much a skeptic. However, it did seem to be working. But what I didn't count on was that it was going to actually change me. And I think the combination of being in the garage and that solitary kind of meditative time coupled with the Reiki is what really opened me up. And that's when I started to, hear voices, and children were saying mom, but my kids were at school. Or nails were moving off, on the top of a workbench. So I was definitely seeing things that I could easily dismiss, that we would all dismiss, like, oh, that something just moved. There was a truck that came by. But it became so intense that there was no way I could ignore it. And of course, I did question my sanity at that point. But, by the time I'm starting to see children walk through my kitchen who are in spirit, by the time I'm starting to actually have sort of full-on conversations with them without saying a word, that's when I knew there was something to this. And then the validation that I would get on top of that helped a lot.
Right. And, so you're hanging out, you're having conversations with spirit. And my guess is you're trying to keep your shit together.
Yeah.
Right. And eventually, but you bring it up to your husband, right? And what was his reaction to all this?
He was actually very supportive. I think he was a little bit like, okay, I'm going to just kind of keep an eye on her, to be honest with you. But he was outwardly supportive. He wasn't saying, Kiersten, that's crazy. He was saying, I believe in you, and I don't think you're crazy. Now, the fortunate part for me is that he's also highly intuitive. And I remember one night we were laying in bed and there was a child standing at the door, and he saw her. I had spoken with her earlier in the day, but hadn't said a word. And he said, do you see the girl standing in the door with the long dark hair? Yeah. And I hugged him. I was like, thank you for saying that.
I got chills on that. And here's what I'll tell you, like my wife sees stuff every once in a while, and kind of always has. between us all, I'm in no mood for it. So
yeah.
I'm just gonna go ahead and trust that it's happening. I don't need
Yeah.
I don't need to verify. I'm cool.
I
So, but
understand.
so what I think is cool about that, and super important is that having that kind of support, because I mean that takes a lot of it took a lot for you to
Mhm.
be like, hey, I'm seeing things and this is going on, right? Like that could
Right.
go any direction in the relationship, right? He'd
Yeah.
be like, listen, I gotta get the kids and go. Good luck with the
Exactly.
ghosts.
Yeah.
I listen to Eddie Murphy, I'm out, right? Like
Yes,
so
exactly. I give him a lot of credit because he didn't bail on that,
right. So I mean, that can take a lot, especially, as you're going through it and it's coming up. Um so yeah, let's talk about validation, right, of it. So it's not just
Mhm.
validating, you got some kind of validation from, your husband and this other stuff, but like let's talk about where it leads you like next, right? I believe you're kind
Sure.
of yeah, let's like walk through the book a little bit, I guess, as it were.
Okay. That
Yeah.
sounds great. So
Yeah.
the next step was, it's starting to ramp up. And I noticed that the more that I was open to it, the more it would ramp up, the more people would be kind of showing up at my doorstep, so to speak. And I remember channeling a boy named Nate, and I describe him in the book and his family, and I'm still really close to them to this day, which is awesome. But I didn't know Nate. He died when he was 13. I knew his parents, but I didn't know them very well. We went to high school together. So you can imagine, as I'm just scrolling the Facebook feed and I see a memorial post about Nate's death, and it had been a few years since he had passed, he then shows up on my right side and starts talking to me. And I'm kind of freaking out at that point. I'm scared for a number of reasons because he's asking me to share information with his parents. And I'm thinking, I don't know them. I don't want to hurt them. What if this isn't real? What if this is all in my mind? So, I went through all of the emotions you would go through as a sane person. And then ultimately I decided, I had to get quiet, I had to kind of put it away for a little bit and then come back to it. And once I came back to it, I had this knowing of, what, it's time, I can do this. And I'm so glad I reached out to them because I was able to share messages and continue to share messages to this day. And Nate is with me quite a bit. He's, pops in and out. He was actually even with me when I was recording the audio book. And he knew that I was getting really hot if you've been in an audiobook booth. And I was also claustrophobic. So he decides he's going to open the door for me. And I have to tell you, the audio engineer, I think his life has been completely changed by this experience because, he's hearing the door open on the other side and I have an entire blanket between me and the door. There's like no way I could have opened it. And
Right.
he kind of freaked out. So that's Nate. So Nate's awesome. Nate opens doors and he facilitated communication between, his family and myself. And it gave me the confidence that I needed to continue to move forward. Because without that, I don't think I would have had the confidence. I would have just stuffed it away. I would have thought, I don't want to deal with this. This is too much.
Well, I think it's one thing to talk about it with your family.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, did you see ghosts? Yeah, I saw ghosts. Let's all see ghosts, right? Like whatever, right? We're hanging out. We're the ghost family. That's what we do. Versus coming out beyond your family, right? And reaching out to people that like you said, they're already like in just not the best place, right? And as parents,
right?
like nobody ever wants to lose their child no matter what. And then you're like, hey, I've been talking to Nate, but they were receptive, right? But you took, again, this is another kind of like a leap of faith, right? Another chance where you're just like, fine, we'll go ahead and we'll do it, right?
A lot of leaps of faith. Mm-hmm.
Scary.
Very scary.
Super scary. No doubt. You talked about opening doors too. I just want to highlight this part too. As you go through this, I'm just gonna jump through some pieces here. As you go through this, you've got other spirits start, like they're all like, hey, Kiersten's the one, go reach out to Kiersten, and you got like a line of them, right? But a part of what you do, and I thought that this was pretty cool, was you help them through a light door. This was just prompted by you talking. Talk a
Mhm.
little bit about this thing that you do, and I believe is that associated with part of your organization as well? Is that something that you do as a service, or is that kind of just something that's ad hoc and in the group that you?
Yeah, it's kind of just ad hoc, and it happens when it happens. If a case does come through our nonprofit and it requires me helping someone cross into the light, then I can do that. But that was new to me. I mean, I'd watched The Ghost Whisperer, right? So I knew that there was something, that had to do with crossing into the light, but I didn't know what I was doing. So as all of this is happening, I was not the person who was seeking any education on this. I was not mindful of any of that. So as they're starting to come in, I'm starting to notice patterns because I'm very scientific. I like research. I like to find patterns. And I started to notice that when spirit would come in and they hadn't crossed into the light yet or on the other side, they would be on my right hand side. Like they would come to my right. There would be chills on my right hand side. If they were already on the other side, they come to the left. So I was starting to notice that. But then there was what do I do? So I Googled it. And apparently you can Google a lot. So I Googled how to build furniture. I Googled how to cross spirit into the light. I'm a Googler. So I Googled it. And I basically just learned that if I speak with them, they speak back. I reassure them that there's no hell, that they can come back and forth. I envision in my mind that there's a large light that they can walk through. And I just, it's a lot of reassuring because a lot of times, I mainly channel children or young people, teens, sometimes in their early 20s. That's the age range for me for some reason. But some of them have committed suicide and they feel a lot of guilt and fear, that they're going to go to hell. And so I do a lot of explaining before I actually help them cross.
So that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool that you don't just communicate with them. There's also a part of what you do that says, hey, you're stuck. Let me help you through, and it's okay to pass through. You're going to be okay on this other side versus kind of like, again, just standing there on the ledge waiting for, and just being afraid of what's next.
Right.
And offering guidance. Super cool. These guys, your spirit, your spirit connection also helped you to get on a Shark Tank. Let's talk about that a little bit.
They kind of did. Yeah. I mean, they gave me the intuitive hits to do it. My dad actually called me up and this was in 2010. And he said, have you seen this new show called Shark Tank? So I just sort of laughed thinking it was like, a show about sharks. And he said, no, it's for your business. Like, I know I was busting at the seams at that point. I had celebrities and interior designers from all over the world asking for my toy boxes, which was kind of crazy to begin with, right? That's when sure. Intuition works because I was just a mom in a garage. So anyhow, he called me up and asked me if I'd seen the show. And so I took a look at it. And my first reaction was, this looks really scary. And I don't know if I want to put myself out there like that. And then I, again, sat back and thought, no, I can do this. I need to do this because I need to grow my business. I need to scale it. I need to find a mass manufacturer because I was at the point where I could only do so much with my two hands.
Again, for those that are listening, right? You had this business that was just literally out of like your garage, hammer, nail, in between classes to get the kids and run life, right? And it's impossible to scale, right, without kind of taking those next steps. And as you wrote in the book, and as you just did, like, I mean, you were getting some really nice publicity.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Demand was there, and so Shark Tank's like, let's go.
Yeah, and they picked me, which was great because there are a lot of people that sign up for that show, and I mean, it was the second season of it, so I didn't have as much time, a harder time getting on the show because it was still new. They weren't lining people up in stadiums, auditioning them. I literally just had to record a video and send it in, and there you go. But I ended up on the show. I ended up kind of going through my own intuition lesson on the show as well, because being someone who always was a people pleaser, her entire life and not quite understanding why I was that people pleaser. But I was, and I was on the show and the producers are telling me to do one thing. And I'm thinking, this doesn't feel right. And I need to do something different. I really need to do that. But that's going to, again, require me speaking up, putting myself out there and saying, I'm not going to take that advice. I'm going to go this route. And I'm really glad I did, because I ended up getting 2 offers on the show, and it airs internationally. I still get messages from people all over the place that, watch it on Hulu. And that's just been incredible to have that, that experience.
That's super cool. Yeah, I love, again, this is a bit out of the book, right? Where, you work on this speech and your presentation, the pitch, as it were. And then, was it the day before, the night before, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And everybody's like, whoa, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
That's such a bad idea. But also, I think, I don't know that we hit on it here so much. We did talk a little bit about, where we talk about it, that you were a marketing executive for A&E.
Yes.
This wasn't your first rodeo, right?
No.
Given these pitches. And, so you were just like, hey, what we worked on isn't in alignment with what it is that I'm doing. And you're like, I'm going to go in and be in alignment with what it is that I'm doing. And, I've trained my entire life basically for this, and I'm just going to let it kind of speak from the heart as well. Right.
Yeah. It had to be authentic to me, and I knew it wasn't. And so that was the impetus for me to say, you know what, I can't do this. I have to kind of do it my way. And they fought me on it, but ultimately when I got up on the stage and, I did well. I remembered my pitch. I did well. And again, I got the 2 offers. And what's interesting about that show is sometimes, as you read, those deals don't go through afterwards. Right. And this is something that I did not know. I didn't understand that.
I didn't know either until after I read it.
Yeah. And it's kind of common, to be honest with you, unless you pair up. If the sharks pair up, there's accountability. But I think sometimes they can decide that they don't want to go through with it. Right. Maybe they got wrapped up in the moment. So that's what happened to me. Happened to me. Thankfully, Hulu airs Shark Tank episodes, and a true angel investor out of California wrote to me and said, did you get that deal? Because I would love to invest in your company. So I was able to actually get more money, and I gave away less equity.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, that kind of leads into the darkness. Though,
yes,
right?
It does.
This
yes.
So it's been quite, it's been an uplifting journey up to this point, for the most part, right? But then, here we go. You're traveling. You are working on Mod. You have gotten a potential spokesperson spot and working with. Are they national or international company?
They were they actually produce overseas, or they used to. But they were, big company,
large
Stanley
company,
Furniture.
Very
large company.
Right. So you get this job offer, and you're going to close the deal, determine a couple of final, dot the I's, cross the T's kind of thing. Then what happens?
Yeah. So here's the darkness coming in. So I want to back up for a tiny bit just to say that, what I started to notice as I was a medium, kind of an undercover medium really, is, as I was growing Mod Mom, I was on Shark Tank, all that stuff was happening. So when you watch Shark Tank and you see that, all of the spirit stuff was happening behind the scenes with me. I was starting to notice that a lot of the kids that were coming in had been sexually abused or murdered by pedophiles and predators. And I just thought to myself, that's really interesting. I don't know why. I'm honored that they're coming to me. Maybe it's because I'm a mom, but I don't necessarily know why they're coming to me. So with that in the back of your mind, I then enter into a trade show where I am supposed to be meeting with, a bunch of different TV networks and talking about Stanley. And I was about to sign a $5 million licensing deal with them. And I lost my job. They shut down their production of their youth division. So the minute I land in North Carolina, I lose my job. So I'm basically in a perfect storm, which did not help things. So here I am, perfect storm. trying to figure out what am I going to do. My husband wasn't making enough money at that point because I was the main breadwinner. So I stayed. I tried to figure things out because I knew maybe if I stayed and I worked hard enough and I got a lot of meetings, I could get a different licensing deal.
Right.
Unfortunately, I ended up meeting a man named Tony at that event. And Tony walked in and kind of knowing a lot about me, but I didn't realize that he knew as much as he did about me. And he just swept me off my feet. Yeah. I wasn't planning on any of that. It was not something, we had my husband, Scott, and I were having issues in our marriage. And marriage is hard. I mean, you're married, right? It can be hard. Yes. But
listen, it's a relationship. I think any like ongoing long-term relationship is hard. Then couple that with you spend all of your time with each other, right?
Absolutely.
So it's a
job loss and what I was going through with the afterlife, and so at that point I started to connect the dots. I started to actually have visions of myself being abused by my uncle when I was between the ages of 3 and 6. And I ended up finding out that I was raped by him at 5. I don't have a lot of memory of my childhood. So I was sort of looking back and putting all the pieces together because that's what you do. Had I not had the mediumship base and the validation and working with cops and detectives across the country, I wouldn't have believed what I saw.
Right.
So I truly knew that's why they were coming to me. So I found that out right before I went down to what they call market and when I met Tony. So that was the full spectrum to give you the full piece.
Yeah. No, that's important for sure.
Yeah. So Tony ended up sweeping me off my feet. In looking back now, it was absolutely, it's sort of a handbook that the narcissist has, the sociopath has, and he followed it to a T. He was able to know enough about me in order to sort of pull me in, and I let him.
Right.
And I think this is where, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this man is amazing. I'm having all the chills. I'm having everything that you would have, from an intuitive standpoint too. Our marriage has been really hard and I'm done. Right. Now, that was a week after meeting him. So I'm already not acting like the old Kiersten. I'm already in a different headspace, but not understanding that I am. Right. So that led me down a road of 3 years of abuse, narcissistic abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse. It was getting to physical abuse.
And one of the pieces too, I think it makes sense too to say, hey, here was this guy, Tony, comes in and sweeps you off your feet. Not only was he had the this type of guy, but he was in the industry that you were in, offered support, came in. I remember this, took charge. You felt like, this was something you needed in your life. This was the help you needed to get through and into the next steps. And, there was a bunch of other stuff that, I think as any relationship goes on, you're like, this has been nice to have somebody give me this kind of attention and, be in this space. And it's just kind of, it all took in, and it was all pretty rapid, right, in this book. And you're just you're like, you know what, like you said, I'm out, and you go into this relationship of you're in, I think, the relationship, and wasn't it Scott or one of the somebody calls out, you'll have your first argument in 6 months, and you're still right. And it happened, right? Right around that period.
Yes, it was interesting. It was around 4 months, I think, when I started to actually recognize this doesn't feel right. And that's another reason I wrote the book, because my intuition, I couldn't think it or, feel it through my head or my heart, but my body could feel it. Right. And so I was starting to get all kinds of weird body signals that something was off, even though I am stubborn. I was driven. I was no, this is right for me. And in abusive relationships, it's not all bad. That's the thing, right? It's not all bad all the time. It's the cycle of abuse that you get trapped in. So I ended up finally, feeling around the 4-month mark that something wasn't right here, because he started to talk about my eye contact with other men. He was kind of questioning things, but being a person that's very introspective and always goes and looks inside and says, oh yeah, maybe I could have done that better. Or maybe
Sure.
this is,
Yeah. Right.
that's how I operate. So that's what I did.
Sure. Yeah. And you talk about the cycle, and it's funny. I read actually listened to an article a few years back talking about neuropeptides, right? That just says, hey, what you were going through was like the heightened like affectionate, right?
Yeah.
You've got the highs of affection, but then you also have these highs of like, oh shit, what is going on here? And like this kind of like this like I wouldn't call it paranoia, but like you're in a heightened state of like awareness, defensiveness, and like fight or flight at all times, right? And so
yes.
So
and I was not used to that.
Your body, right, with those neuropeptides, it's like it's an injection of energy, and your body doesn't discern like, oh, that's good energy, I want more of that.
Right.
It's just addicted to the energy, whatever energy it is. Bad energy? Oh yeah, it's just energy. Give me more of that. So that's where you found yourself, was like in this wave of after wave. It feels good. I want more of that. Oh shit. I guess I want more of that. But you don't, right? Like, yeah.
No, you don't. And that's what's so impossible for abuse survivors, because I think in our society, we shame survivors a lot. And we say, well, why didn't you leave sooner? Instead of saying, well, why are they the way they are? And for me, the key was understanding the intuitive hits I was getting too from my body. Like I was having a buzzing sensation on my right hip anytime he would yell at me. Right. Now that I'm out of the relationship and have been since 2017, I don't have that anymore. Yeah. So it was really interesting to pair that with the fact that I also was starting to understand the cycle that I was stuck in from the dopamine highs and the the biochemicals, I guess, that were like you were talking about. I didn't know that. Nobody talked about that with me. I had no clue I was addicted to it,
Yeah, no idea. I don't think that, I think those are newer findings, and people, like, you just got to work the relationship out.
Right. Yeah.
Like hell I do. So, but I think one of the other things too, that's kind of important here is that, you had, was the guy's name Jason, right? That said, hey, hey, this relationship, go through with it. And you're like, okay, everything felt right and aligned. And then at the same time, like later, same guy's like, all right, it's time to check out. Right.
It's interesting, from the spirit side, right? So what I was starting to finally understand by the end of the relationship, by the time I was ready to get a restraining order, it was that bad. Jason was coming in. Now, he was 23 when he died of a heroin overdose. He has been with me throughout all of this. He was the one saying, go get the restraining order now, really helping me, from the other side. He was the first one to say, he's your drug. And he understood that as a heroin addict, right? Sure. So there was a lot, there were those pieces, right? So they're sort of saying, yes, this is all feeling very, very big and very, very like intense because we had to hit you over the head with it. Because I don't think, to be honest with you, I would be where I am now. And I know my husband and I would not be where we are now had I not gone through this. And then later on, as you read in the book, Jason came back in and said, this piece of your life was planned before your birth. Like you could not have avoided him. And I definitely had I had free will. I could have done, things differently, but I think that's what I honestly feel that in my soul, because I wouldn't be able to tell the story.
No. And right. Like, and it was part of your healing journey, right? You might not have uncovered some of the stuff that you did to become who you are. And nobody's going to recommend, and you certainly aren't recommending, hey, go find yourself an abusive relationship so that you can heal. But this was your
not at all.
this was your journey, right? And I think another thing that was kind of interesting as you talked about this was that the spirits didn't reach out to you as often during that period of the relationship. What do you think what was going on there?
It was too dark. It was too dark. I was living with a man who had no conscience. operated off of just whatever his ego wanted, was horribly abusive. So those children, and I eventually found out he was a predator, with countless women and teenager that I know of, at least one. Yeah. So they're going to back away. Now, my core crew of kids that have been around me and with me for a long time, like Nate and Carrie and Jason, they stuck with me. But the rest of them were sort of waiting in the wings for me to get out of it. But it was up to me to do that, and I think that's what's so interesting about that journey, is figuring out, what would have happened if I stayed. I would have died. I had no doubt about that. I was told that I would have died, either by his hand or by my own, because I was locked in such an abusive situation. My hair was falling out. My body was completely out of whack. I was smoking to try and to cope with all of it. It was just a mess. And I know so many people find themselves in that. It's heartbreaking.
Absolutely. Look, it's no good for anybody to be in that situation. My mom left an abusive relationship, several. My father was, locked away because of that, growing up. So I understand, kind of the toll it can take, and then, how it impacts others, right? In some way, shape, or other. One of the other things too is that, so you've got Mod Mom working, like, before you go into this relationship, like, things are like, they're decent, right? Yeah, you're hitting snags, right? Tony's like, hey, I can help you with this stuff because, he had at least what you thought was a credible name in the industry and all this other stuff. So whatever happened with Mod Mom throughout all this?
So Mod Mom ended up, it's still going today, which is great. I actually do have a manufacturer, but it was interesting to watch because what I saw myself do was sort of push it aside. Once I lost that deal, then it became about his line of furniture. And so at that point, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I believe in him. He's going to help me. Let's go ahead and just pour everything into his line, and then we can come back to Mod Mom. So I literally put it on the back burner for many years. And after I got out of the relationship, it started to soar again. Literally, like within the first week that I was out, I was reached out to by a manufacturer who said, are you looking for, a licensing deal? And so it just, testament to energy, right? The heaviness of darker energy.
Right. Yeah. Well, I just, I guess I'm just trying to highlight, the and even during that time, like, everything Tony was working on was, kind of turning to shit, like, for lack of better terminology. It wasn't working out, right?
It was turning to shit. Yep. Absolutely.
So, and I highlight this just simply because I'm aware that, you're back online, you're back on track, and you're doing well, and things are in a positive space. But I think that if we take a look at it all, right, is the whole idea of being in alignment with the truth of who you are, following your intuition, and kind of paying attention to it. And when everything's in alignment and you're being true to who you are, things work out. It's weird, right? You're like, I don't get it, but here it is, it's working. And I wanted to highlight those two pieces because there's a juxtaposition in the book too. Like, everything's a mess, and as soon as you kind of step out of it and you realize it, and it has to do with, like, the energy that you're around, or is coursing through your insides match your outsides, is what they say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I wasn't being abused anymore. And I was literally able to heal little Kiersten because I stood up for her by standing up, to him and saying, no, I'm done with this. And I'm one of the only women that he has done this to that can be vocal about it.
Well, you've got a platform. I feel good about that. You've got a platform. You're capable too. I think that a lot of people might give marketing a bad shtick, but, like, you're capable. You know how to tell the story in order to evoke the emotion. Not that you have to because you lived it, but, like, hey, listen, this is real, right? I can tell a story and share it. So I think that's important too. Again, these are all the parts of you that came together so that you could expose this guy to others, B, share your story with others in a way that they understand. Like, again, if Kiersten, not to say that any drug addict deserves to get treated the way that you were in this situation, but if it had come from a drug addict, like, maybe she shouldn't have been doing drugs.
Yeah, right. I know. Right. Yeah.
So the background allows for credibility.
Absolutely. Right. And I think, the other side of it is that I hadn't heard the term wounded attachment. I'd never heard of that, even when I was in therapy after I got out of the relationship, and I was still, trying to put my life back together and figure out, how did I get here? It wasn't something that was known to me. And that is another reason why I wrote the book and I wanted to tell the story, because wounded attachment is the subconscious way of attracting or being attracted to wounds that happened in childhood. So for me, what I didn't equate was that my uncle was very much like Tony. And I literally replicated that type of abuse as an adult, because little Kiersten was the subconscious driver of that bus. And 80% of our behavior is driven by our subconscious. So just even learning that piece of this, even without the intuition, was so impactful for me and powerful.
Powerful journey. So Mod Mom's on. What's the organization, Kiersten?
National Institute for Law and Justice.
That's another one. So you've got two. Okay. That's one of them. So hit on that one real quick for us. So what's that?
Sure.
Yeah. What's involved there?
So one of the detectives that I worked with across the country over the last 10 years, his name is Mark Pucci, and he actually wrote the foreword for the book. He and I co-founded a nonprofit. It's a 501c3, and it's called the National Institute for Law and Justice. And we help families of crime victims at no cost. Because what we are finding, a lot of the cases I worked on involve missing persons, involve homicide, that is, maybe it's a suicide, but it's actually a homicide, that type of thing. And he has worked on a lot of those cases too, as an NYPD retired detective. So basically we said, let's do this. Let's make it so it's not so freaking expensive for the families. Let's try and take that burden off of them and see what we can do. And we're going to band together everybody we know. So we're bringing in cold case detectives. We're bringing in, anyone and everyone that we know is credible and that has volunteered to work with us.
That's pretty awesome. I love that. And then you've got another one where you are helping others, children with sensitivities. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not really an organization. It's just something I do. And I have found, in my life, I clearly have been guided to many people, sometimes for hard lessons, sometimes for great stuff. But in this case, I feel like the parents of these children who are highly, highly intuitive find me. Sometimes I know them, sometimes I don't. And I literally just try and to show them, here's what worked for me. Here's how you can create boundaries. Like if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can write a whole list of rules. Like I will not be woken up at night. It's a lot about using your own power to deal with being highly, highly intuitive, because it was scary as hell as a 36-year-old. I can't even imagine, I don't remember that. I know it happened to me when I was a little kid, but I don't remember that. And I wanted to help those kids get through that.
No, that's pretty awesome too. I've got friends, my wife included, who, sensitive at an early age, but don't or didn't have the resources to, talk to someone about it in a supportive fashion versus, oh, you didn't see anything.
Right.
Oh, you didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Right. Type of thing. So I think that's a really cool service that you're doing.
Thank you.
Book's awesome. I enjoyed
Thank
it. I certainly recommend, like I said, it's definitely been binge readable. I saw somebody else wrote it and I was like, it's true. It was bingeable. That's what it was.
Bingeable.
But
I like it.
bingeable. There it is. So we are on a little spot that I always like to call like kind of spiritual speed dating, Kiersten.
Cool.
Somebody's going to pop in here and they're going to be like, maybe Kiersten's my next spiritual speed date. This one works. This one works for me. I think, I pull out about 20 questions. So spiritual bachelorette number 1, why is there poverty and suffering in the world?
Oh my gosh, you picked a big one. Okay, so this is where I'm going to be very honest and claim that I really don't know everything. I don't know everything. I know my little piece of the world. I know that I can communicate with these kids. They pass information. We help get answers, and we help connect families. I think the poverty and strife and all of that, I don't have an answer for it. I wish that I did. Like it's similar to, I don't really have an answer for why kids die. Why is this happening? I do feel like there are some things like in my life, right, that were planned before my birth. My soul said, I am coming in and I'm going to learn these things. Patience is one of them. I know that in my life. I know that. But right. I really don't know. So that's not, I don't have an answer for you on that one.
All good. I mean, if it was me and I'm talking to you, and I am, and I would say, I think in the suffering aspect of this, as we look at your story, yours was to kind of guide you through something where at the time the suffering sucked, right? Yes. It was awful.
Yeah.
But the end result was something beneficial.
Absolutely. Right. And I will say, some of the kids some of the parents of the children who have passed on have started foundations, and they've started nonprofits that help others. And so I can see how that, does benefit. It helps us grow, right? As a society and humanity, it helps us sort of elevate. But I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's all I got.
It works, right? It works. Sure, one wish for the world.
Oh my gosh, one wish for the world. I honestly wish, it's very similar to that. And I don't know if it was Gandhi who said this. I can't remember who said it, but if we all meditated, right, we would have a completely different world. Like if we all had that mindset. I'm not big on meditation, to be honest with you. I'm too ADD for that. However, I understand it's just tapping into that, to that inner knowing and to the universe, and understanding that we're all connected, right. And how we treat others, whether we're here or in another continent, it has a ripple effect. And that's what I wish. I wish that was something that could become more known, I guess.
For sure. I love it. This one is not out of my question bank, but if you continue to go the way you're going now, how long is it going to take for Phoenix to move you to Sedona?
Okay, so funny enough, we lived in Flagstaff. We were 45 minutes from Sedona, and we would go down there and visit all the time. I love Sedona. It's not really my bag. It's not my bag.
Too crunchy. I got it.
Yeah.
Too crunchy.
Exactly.
No, I had to do it. Kiersten, is there anything else that you want to share with the group? Where can we send people to find you? What's next?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So KierstenHatchcock.com. You can find all kinds of good information. I'm in the middle of book touring at this point because the book just came out. The audiobook will be coming out October 18th. And awesome. I'm excited too. We actually sat down, my husband Scott and I sat down with the audio engineer and Nick, and we talked about what happened during the recording, which is kind of cool to get the backstory. Yeah. So I'll be giving that out too to anybody that buys the audiobook.
Well, that's cool. I always appreciate that. Will the book tour be listed on your, like where you're going?
Yes, it is. Website? It's on my website under events. And so you'll see. Right now, I'm actually going back to my hometown in Defiance, Ohio. Shout out to Defiance.
What a great name.
I know. Defiance. So we're going to do that in November.
One other thing I'll call out about the book that I thought was pretty interesting is this is a spiritual memoir. It's not easy to get this published. This is a published book. This is not a self-published piece. And, congratulations on that as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was a journey in itself. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Very cool. Kiersten, thanks again for being on today.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Brandon. Take care.
Absolutely.
Really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Spiritual Dope Podcast. Stay connected with us directly through spiritualdope.co. You can also join the discussion on Facebook, Spiritual Dope, and Instagram at spiritual_dope. If you would like to speak with us, send us an email through brandon@spiritualdope.co. And as always, thank you for cultivating your mindset and creating a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking part of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay fully up to date. Until next time, be kind to yourself and trust your intuition.